Retired officers from the Gordon Highlanders and the Queen's Own delivered their blunt message in Inverness.
Organised some time ago, this press conference was originally intended to launch a major recruiting drive by the Queen's Own Highlanders throughout the north. But following publication of the government's defence cutbacks, it was used instead to mount a defiant stand against controversial plans to merge the two Highland regiments. Retired officers from both the Queen's Own and Gordon Highlanders are pledging to fight what they describe as an unnecessary and unjust plan. And they're warning Scots Tory bosses ignoring the strong anti-merger lobby could have severe repercussions at the ballot box.
This is an issue which will be very much in the public eye, and we will make sure that it is an issue that is very much in the public eye. And therefore, if the public go to the ballot box and express their views at the ballot box, and they express their views that we should be maintained, then I think it is up to the government and to the secretary to take account of those views.
There's not much Conservative representation in Scotland at the moment. And quite honestly, I believe that in the next time, the general election, there will be considerably less.
Top soldiers meet to decide their campaign tactics in the fight against amalgamation. Ill-conceived and ill-considered is the claim of the top brass, but the veterans who gathered in Inverness for a Queen's Own Highlanders reunion are even more vocal in their criticism, as Isabel Fraser reports.
For the veterans and serving soldiers of the Queen's Own Highlanders gathering to beat the retreat at the Cameron Barracks in Inverness, the proposed amalgamation has incited open revolt. Under the Defence Secretary's proposals, the Queen's Own merge with the Gordons over the next 3 years, shedding 600 soldiers in the process. Within the regiments, it's seen as a shotgun marriage being forced upon two very unwilling participants for questionable political gain. Regimental Colonel Major General John Hopkinson says he's embittered and confused by the Queen's Own selection.
Nobody has told me why it is that the Queen's Own Highlanders should suffer. We are well recruited. We have been throughout the whole of our last 30 years as Queen's Own Highlanders. So we don't think that that is an issue which affects us. Secondly, we've always been highly regarded as a regiment, and therefore even more so, we fail to understand why it is that we should be chosen.
The old and bold pipe band of veterans played to the crowds as their former colleagues plotted a political campaign. Public marches to generate national sympathy and support for a mass petition are in the pipeline as feelings run high.
We'll protest every way we can do it. In fact, it was suggested to me the day that we get as many ex-pipers and drummers and as many ex-Seaforths and cannons march through Inverness and let them know all about it.
I'm afraid that's the Highland clearances once again. Why us? Is my main problem about the whole thing. I mean, I'm ashamed without fear or favour, we are the finest infantry in the British Army, and we're well recruited and everything else. Why should we be done again?
There's no way in the world that we should amalgamate the Gordon Highlanders. We are a regiment within ourselves. We're not a regiment, we're a family. And it's a family we should stay.
If we protest car stickers and everything else, and get our Highland region and all the different Western Isles and Moray district, we'll win.
The practical implications of the planned cutbacks are also high in the campaign agenda. Some 40,000 training places would be lost, and top soldiers will argue the general reduction in job opportunities is particularly damaging in a recession. The public and political campaign to save the Scottish regiments will gather momentum in the coming weeks. Scotland's colonels draw up their battle plan at a special meeting on Thursday.
The final weekend for the Queen's Own Highlanders. Established in 1961, most of its soldiers will now form a new regiment with the Gordon Highlanders. With pride they wore the regimental clothes called ceremonial number ones. Thoughts were on days past, the front line of the Gulf War, guarding the King of Norway during his recent state visit. It was a day which delighted everyone in uniform. But beneath the surface, emotions ran high. From foot soldiers to commanding officer, they knew what they would miss.
I think the friendship, the tremendous friendship.
It's just all the boys being together and just great, but hopefully the new battalion will be just as better and just as good.
And how sad are you today?
It's a sad day for everybody, I think, really. But It's got to happen, sorry to say, but it has.
The marching soldiers were heading for a private service at St Giles Cathedral, their final gathering inside a church as Queen's Own Highlanders. Friends of the regiment came too. Sir Fitzroy Maclean was one of the old soldiers who attended. Other guests showed that the army tradition has a future. The last parade of the Queen's Own Highlanders will be at Dreghorn Barracks tomorrow. After that, the soldiers will look to the future in the newly formed Highland Regiment.
And that takes us to a recap of tonight's